Hey, it's Vanessa, and welcome back to Born to Build the New. In today's episode, we are talking about Spider-Man and your purpose work, which seems like a really odd mashup of topics. However, by the end of this episode, you'll see how they're connected and how mashing them up helps you better lead the larger calling that you're here for. And no, I'm not going to tell you you just need to become a superhero and then everything will click into place. This episode is actually based on a series of synchronicities that happened for me this week. I did not intend to record this or have an agenda around mixing up Spider-Man and your purpose work. But after what happened this week, I had to record an episode on it. So before I get into too many details, let me introduce myself. I'm the host of Born to Build the New, Vanessa Smith, your energy guide, identity seer, and love to talk about the paradigm shift that we're in right now and what your specific purpose role is within that. As you know, you have a wide variety of gifts that you're meant to be synthesizing together and using them to build the new through your purpose work, through your presence, through how you show up to everything that you do. That's what this paradigm shift is truly asking of many of us right now. And it requires a different sense of self, a different sense of leadership, a different sense of alignment, of really being connected with what your purpose work is and how it actually does fit into the larger collective shift that is unfolding right now. That is my introduction for what we talk about on this podcast. And I love to explore what comes up in the process of building what we're here for, of merging your purpose work with the paradigm shift, the messiness of that, the mission part of it, all of these pieces that are happening for us when we're in the middle of our build. So with that being said, I want to go straight into sharing with you some of the synchronicities that happened for me this week around Spider-Man, because it was unexpected and odd, and I really had to sit with it intuitively to unpack the meaning for myself so I could make sense of why Spider-Man showed up in my reality so many different times. And to preface it, before I get into the details of what rolled out, I will say that I do not have a younger kid right now. So that is not how, this is what we would typically think would happen. Oh, she probably has a little kid who's into Spider-Man. Nope. I mean, even when my teenager was younger, he's not really into Spider-Man. So that was not where this came from. Where it came from must have been deep within the recesses of my psyche, or, sometimes we simply can't put our finger on where these synchronicities pop out. They have to be so contrasting from our regular day-to-day reality that they really catch our attention. Here's where it started. Earlier this week, I had a dream where I was getting ready to present, and somebody was helping me pick out what clothes I was going to wear and wanted to know what topics I was talking about. And this is admittedly a dream of mine. Here's actually a funny side note. Whenever I would have a bad day, before I had a business, even when I was, say teenager or in my 20s, I've just have always done this thing where I will monologue. And I'm not just talking about, you talk to yourself in a kind way, like you're having just a conversation in your own head with yourself. Everybody does that, even if they don't admit it. I'm talking about, I would walk around my house as if I was on a stage and there was maybe, 500 to 1,000 people in the audience. and I would just speak. And it was always funny to me that brought me so much peace because if you know me in daily life, I can be on the quieter side, maybe more observant. I mean, give me a microphone and we'll talk for a long time. I love to talk on the podcast or being a guest on other podcasts. But it's just, it gave me so much peace to be in the identity of a speaker, of a messenger, of having this audience to just share these things with that came organically through me, all these different topics. So in my dream, I'm getting ready to present somewhere. I don't know where. And I'm talking to somebody and they're picking out these outfits for me. And I'm kind of having some hesitation in my dream around what do I wear? What am I going to talk about? Like antsy to get there, but then also not feeling maybe completely secure in myself, maybe not having the highest self-esteem moment. And so the person and I were like, okay, we've gotten the things together and we're headed to this event or wherever it was supposed to take place. Next thing I know, in the dream, Spider-Man is chasing us. And he doesn't feel like a very benevolent Spider-Man. He's like not a nice Spider-Man in my dream. And so we had to put the car on warp speed so it could energetically dissolve, including us and everything within the car, so we could drive through a building. I mean, it really was just a dream that felt straight out of a Marvel movie or something like that. And we had to do it quick. Like we had to press that button on warp speed so we could move through this building so Spider-Man wouldn't get us because it was not a nice Spider-Man. It was honestly a little freaky and disconcerting. And then I woke up, right? I woke up right before we were about to dissolve and go through that building. And I thought, well, that's an odd dream. Where did that come from? Like, what is that about? But I kind of brushed it aside and thought, okay, our consciousness takes us to funny places when we're, working through stuff or whatever it is. Brushed it aside. Later that day, literally just a few hours into the day, I go for a walk and I sit down on a bench that I've never sat at before, but I was like, I want to sit here. So I sit down, I'm by myself, and there's an apartment building across the street from where I'm sitting. And I don't think I've ever seen I've walked by this apartment building a lot. I don't think I've ever seen anybody walk out from it before. Within a minute of sitting down, the door opens, somebody walks out. I'm not even joking. Somebody walks out in a Spider-Man costume. Not a kid, an actual adult in a Spider-Man costume. Not a shirt with Spider-Man on it, a literal Spider-Man costume. And it's one of those moments where it just stops you in your tracks. And it's like, there are no words. I couldn't process it for that moment. I was just trying to reconcile. I just had this dream. It's freaky Spider-Man. I'm like moving into my purpose work in a way that feels really aligned in my dream. I'm having some hesitation. And this like weird, creepy Spider-Man is following me. Like, what is going on? And then this Spider-Man in quote, real life, or what they call waking reality. Who knows which one's the dream and which one's the waking reality. Sometimes consciousness is a little strange like that. And this Spider-Man walks out. So I put that into my back pocket as more information to energetically and intuitively unpack in a moment when I have some grace and space to do so. Fast forward, I shared the experience that I had about Spider-Man onto a small group that I'm facilitating right now around intuition. And I share the story of the dream, and I share what happened about the person walking out in the Spider-Man costume. And then I promise I'm getting to the purpose work part. And one of the people in the group responded that right after I sent this message off sharing about this synchronicity, they, at that moment, heard their phone ding with my message about this story. And they happened to be in the middle of watching a podcast with Tom Holland in it, talking about his role as Spider-Man. I mean, come on. So at this point, I just thought, okay, I need to make the time to unpack what is actually happening in my reality right now, because clearly Spider-Man has a message for me. And since in the context of the dream, it had to do with my purpose work, in the context of the group, it had to do with my purpose work. So I started to sit with this idea of how in the world is Spider-Man related to my purpose work? What is going on? And then I started to look at it from multiple different perspectives, because, that's really what life requires of us to do sometimes, is to examine whatever it is that's happening from a variety of different perspectives, to help us loosen where we're holding a little too tightly to our beliefs of how things should play out, or what we assume will happen, or how we perceive ourselves. So as you likely know, the basic premise of Spider-Man is, here's Peter Parker, gets bit by, he's just a regular teenager, gets bit by a spider, and then gets these Spider-Man powers. And so we see the journey that he goes through, and that's essentially an identity shift. To go from I'm just this regular human to I am now this human with superpowers and gifts that are meant to serve a larger population than me just walking around in the world doing my human thing. That's the obvious first association. And given that my stance in the world is really about how are you using your gifts, those aspects of yourself that come so naturally to you, how are you using that to build the new, to shift the paradigm, to participate in the world via your purpose work, to turn that into your right livelihood? It's very much the standard that I set for myself and do my best to live by. It's the stance that I hold for the work that I do when I'm supporting other people in their purpose work. It really is about bringing their gifts forward and letting their gifts lead when they're building their business or their vision or whatever it is that they're here to do. And so I thought, okay, this is about an identity shift. Where in my life, within my purpose work, do I need to shift how I'm showing up, shift how I'm seeing myself, and allow my gifts to be the leading expression of who I am in the world and how I serve other people? That was, kind of the first obvious aha that I had. And to relate it back to purpose work, and specifically entrepreneurship, and you can take these principles I'm about to share with you and apply it to different settings as well. But because I am an entrepreneur and I serve entrepreneurs primarily, I do want to talk about it from the business angle, because there's these 3 P's that we see in business that we need. This has come up for me, I want to say in parallel to Spider-Man this week in a very loud way. And I want to share them with you because they're, again, connected to Spider-Man, identity, your purpose work, all of these pieces that we're talking about. And the 3 P's are your posturing, your positioning, and your presenting. And your posturing is, when it comes to your business and your gifts and your purpose work, that's really your stance. That's your mindset. That's your standards that you live by, the boundaries that you set. It's how you show up. It's that immediate impression of how you are posturing yourself. And we know this immediately by physical stance, right? When we see somebody who's kind of curled over, not standing straight, not looking straight ahead, or looking at you directly in the eye, they have a posture of, perhaps lower self-esteem or lower self-worth, versus the people that are maybe more forceful, more penetrative, more in your face. That could also be a sign of overconfidence, right? And so we're trying to figure out what is in alignment for us in terms of our posture. How are we posturing ourselves? What are the standards that we're living by? And this is really important in terms of our business. It shows how we are embodying what we preach, or teach, how we serve. How are we embodying that? That's our posture. And then the next P is positioning. And positioning is really what you do and who you do it for. It's how you position yourself. And this has come up for me I feel like I just keep circling around this quite often. It's something that I can do so easily for other people, like help them synthesize all of these different ways that they serve other people, all these different modalities and methodologies and gifts and skills and training, and put it together in a more cohesive whole. So their positioning feels locked in. That's one of my gifts, is to be able to pull those pieces together to synthesize. But when it comes to myself, I'm just like, oh. One day I'm an energy guy. The next day I'm a transformational coach. The next day I'm a holistic business mentor. The next day I'm a new paradigm thought leadership person. It can go all over the map. And I guess it does change to a degree depending on who you're speaking to. But you want to have a sense of, what is my basic positioning here? And the third P is your presentation. So how do you present yourself to people? What's the tone and the cadence of your voice? What are you wearing? How are you presenting yourself out in the world? How are you relating to people? And so when you think about posturing, positioning, and presenting, these three solid core foundational pieces for us as entrepreneurs, especially entrepreneurs who are purpose driven, right? This is our purpose work. And so it's more meaningful for us. It's very much tied with who we are and how we see ourselves. It's not just, I'm trying to sell this random service that I don't really have a connection with, or I want you to buy my product that I don't really have a connection with. It's more truly connected to our identity, to who we see ourselves at. And when I think about Spider-Man, as Peter Parker, he's kind of this humble, quiet, shy teenager who doesn't feel comfortable standing up and stating who he is. And then you look at him as Spider-Man, and there's just a completely different level of confidence in the posturing, in the positioning, and in the presenting. And the contrast between the two identities is so stark that it helped me to better see the different identities that I'm showing up as within my business in different scenarios. How I show up on a podcast can be very different from how I show up in a one-on-one, can be very different from how I show up in a networking meeting. There's a lot of variation for me depending on my mood, the weather, my clarity at the moment, whatever it is. Maybe there's like reverb, energetic reverb from whoever I'm interacting with that I tend to riff off of. Whereas when I'm doing a podcast, especially one that's just on my own, I just, everything flows for me in a much easier way sometimes. And so I really was appreciating how Spider-Man made it very, very clear about the posture, the position, and the presentation. And so those are three of the pieces that you will need to really, well, you don't need to do anything. You're invited to reflect upon. But here's the thing, if you don't tend to these aspects of your purpose work, it won't click into place. You'll feel either off, or like something's out of alignment, or it's not going to gain momentum, or you'll feel like the money won't move, or the messaging won't land, or whatever it is in the purpose work. And so if you come back to, what identity am I existing within? Peter Parker or Spider-Man? What is my posturing, my positioning, and my presenting? Like, let me actually break that down for myself. So that is one of the pieces that I wanted to share with you about Spider-Man, but to bring in this other unexpected aspect of not just identity, but where Spider-Man showed up in my reality yet again, was I had another dream a few days later where there were 4 different Spider-Mans that showed up in my dream. And they weren't interacting with me. They were, hopping over cars, or, walking down the street, or jumping over a tree. They were all doing something different, but they were all headed in the same direction. And it made me think about the Spider-Man movie that had to do with the multiverse. And where there's this idea that there are parallel versions of you that are all doing the same. They're all doing the same thing, but they're all doing it in a different kind of way. And this, again, is similar to the concept of identity and what version of you is showing up. So I started to make a list for myself of all the different versions of myself that show up in my business. And it's one thing to know that as an entrepreneur, you're going to wear many different hats. Unless you outsource all sorts of different tasks to different people, generally you're going to be wearing different hats. And we know what that's like because we're also in our daily life multitasking with these roles that we play, whether that's as a parent or a partner or a daughter or a sibling or a coworker. It's like we are very adaptable, flexible beings to take on a variety of different roles and express ourselves in different ways. So we have already this sense of fluidity when it comes to identity. But when it's concentrated in the form of our business or our purpose work, when you are kind of shifting back and forth through these different identities in a more incoherent type of way, you again will feel like you're being held back. There's not a sense of cohesiveness. You may all be headed in the same direction towards the purpose work, but if you are one moment being the version of you or the Spider-Man that's hopping over the tree, maybe it's the version of you that's avoiding doing the thing, whatever that thing is. And then the next hour, you're a different version of you that is doing all the things at once, right? So we have these competing identities that are driving towards the same end goal, but they have a different energy, different agenda, different personality, different ways of being and doing. And so it really does feel like identities that are existing in parallel realities in this multiverse. And so the invitation for me from that Spider-Man perspective was to take a moment and bring all the versions together into one identity and have that one identity that's driven towards that purpose work, that's moving in that certain direction to like tap the multiverse. And I sat with all of these different versions and I don't want to say commanded, what's a different word? Directed them to reveal the gifts, the highest expression of who they are, who each of them were, and to integrate that all into me right now. So it's kind of like all those different parallel versions, multiverse versions into a cohesive, right now, present time version of me with the gifts leading. And I can't even actually articulate for you what that did for me energetically. I felt so much more grounded, also so much more divinely connected, and also so much more present and clear around what I was tending to in the moment. And so it is a gift to tap into the multiverse, to tap into multiple versions of you, to peek into parallel realities, to see how you're running the show of your purpose work over there and bring it back into your present reality. And just these little creative pivots will open the door to seeing whatever is in front of you in a completely different way. It changes your posture, it changes your position, and it changes how you present it in the world. And so Spider-Man, for me, this week was the antidote to where my purpose work was. It's not that it wasn't moving, it expanded it. And that's the thing that I really think is so important to remember, is that you don't have to be stuck or blocked or have a problem or stalled in whatever it is that you're creating around your purpose work for you to tend to it. You know, something doesn't have to be greatly out of alignment for you to lean into expansiveness and lean into creativity and start to work all of it from this energetic perspective of identity and multiple versions of yourself. And, you know, I started this off saying, I'm not going to tell you to be the superhero here, but maybe that's a good idea too. Because why not? I mean, there's so many aspects of our reality that we take for granted. And when you step back for a minute, it's actually a pretty magical existence, is it not? I mean, think of the complex variety that exists on planet Earth. It's pretty wild. Yet we go through our days with these habitual ways of looking at everything. And there really is another way to bring life back into your moments and to see through this very creative, multi-dimensional lens in a way that can boost your purpose work that you didn't even realize you would have loved experiencing until you're in it. Like, I had no idea Spider-Man was going to take me to the place that it did. So with that, I would love to hear from you of how you are expanding your perspective around your purpose work. Where are you with your posturing, your positioning, and your presenting of the gifts of who you are in the world? You are not your task list. And sometimes we forget that. And I hope this episode served as a reminder and gave you some really tangible ways to work with the energetic, the intuitive, the synchronistic, the multidimensional, to own your gifts, to show up and share, and to drive your purpose work forward in service of the paradigm shift and building the new. As always, you can find me over at vasmith.com, and I look forward to talking with you in the next episode. Thanks so much for tuning in.